This is the Bulldog keyless entry. This is the one I've added on basically every vehicle that I've ever had that does not have keyless entry from the factory. So all of my P71s that I've ever owned, my Dodge Charger police car. So I've installed it several times now. I really like it. It's easy to do, works very well, does what it's supposed to do. This here is a relay for starter lockout. Basically, if you want to start messing with your starter wiring, you can wire this in so that when this is armed, your starter won't work. Me personally, I think if you're going to do something like that, you're better off doing it on the fuel pump. But I have eliminated that and not installed it on any of them. I don't feel like that was a necessary addition to the system, and obviously I have concerns if that ever fails. Is my car going to shut off somewhere, or fuel pump shut off somewhere? So I've steered clear of doing that. But this is the brain unit. I recommend mounting this up under the glove box area in the Crown Vic. If you remove that plastic trim, and I've got videos if you haven't seen it, there's a lot of room to mount this. You can just do, the two-sided sticky tape and stick it to the inside there. If you want to drill a hole or something, you can screw that to something or zip tie that to something. And then the wiring, it just connects. Very simple. Read the installation guide. It'll tell you what wires go where. Generally speaking, you're going to need a full-time fused 12-volt, what we call hot wire, to power this unit, plus a ground. And then depending on what sort of setup you have, you may need some relays, which are not included with this, so you have to buy them. If you don't use the relay to be your starter relay that comes with it, and you unplug it, you can use this relay just as any other relay. And I have videos on how to wire relays to do all kinds of custom stuff. The way they wire them in here is pretty straightforward. So, for example, if your car requires a hot to trigger parking lights, for example, and this unit kicks out a ground, you run that ground to a relay, and when the ground hits the relay, it kicks the relay on, which then will send your hot to the source. So like I know, for example, on the trunk pop on both the Crown Vic and the Charger, it requires a hot that sends out a ground, so you got to run that through a relay. Red is going to be your hot 12-volt full-time power. It says in there that it doesn't need to be fused. I would go ahead and fuse it anyway. There's no reason not to. Particularly with the Crown Vic and the Charger police car, they already have pre-fused, ready to go wiring for you right there at the kick panel area down under the glove box. So there's no reason not to use that. So hook that up to your hot, ground that. Lots of ground sources on police cars. Just basically need to find metal if you're unsure. In the Crown Vic, there's several ground points, and you'll see them when you remove that plastic trim to get to the hot. For this, you'll see several places where they've already used grounds, and so if you just connect it to one of those, you're golden. Yellow is your antenna, and you want to run this somehow or other in the car to get the maximum extension so that when you approach the vehicle, the key clickers will be picked up by this. And like I said, the rest of the wires all have specific uses depending on what you're trying to do. White with red is for the trunk release. The brown is your parking wire light output. If you're going to use the starter immobilizer, it's the orange wire. Like I said, I don't normally use that one. And then the door locks is where you get into, depending on the vehicle, what you're going to do. So on the Ford Crown Victoria, it uses what we call reverse polarity. So when you send hot to one side of the lock motor and ground to the other side, it's going to lock the doors. And if you reverse that and send hot to where you sent the ground before and ground to where you sent the hot, it's going to unlock. And so to do that, you have to use 4 of these wires, and I'll show you which wires to cut on your Crown Victoria and which of these wires to hook up so that it'll work. And it works both when you switch the door switch in your Crown Victoria as well as on this. On the Charger, it's completely different. I've never seen anything like this, but it uses 2 different resistors going to the same wire. And so when it's triggered through one resistor, it locks, and when it triggers to the other resistor, it unlocks. So your blue and black, brown and black, green and black, and white and black wires are your door lock for the Crown Victoria. Your green and black and your blue and black are the wires for the Dodge Charger, and you don't use the others at all. So it comes with the 2 remotes. Only one is going to be set up and working with your system when you buy it. The second remote is an extra remote that you'll have to program. To program it, it's actually very easy. Hold down the lock button on the working remote for 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, get the one that's not working, hold down the lock on it for 5 seconds, and it should learn. And then test them both, make sure they're both working. So you've got your white with black stripe, your brown with black stripe, and those are going, so the white goes to the pink with yellow, the brown goes to the brown with pink, then you got a green going to pink with yellow, and the blue going to pink with green. If you wire it that way, your locks will still work here, and they'll also work with your keyless entry. Alright, I wanted you to see how the lock and unlock is wired in here. This is not done. I would never leave this exposed like this, but I did this so that I could test it and make sure it was still working. So you see I've got the lock and the unlock wires going in with the resistors on them, and then because those weren't going to be long enough to reach, I ran basically a red wire and then tapped it in there. So I'll probably go back over this, hit it with a little solder. Basically just use a pry tool to pry this off. And once you've removed the light switch, you see it's this white wire with a black stripe that you want to tap into, and that will activate your parking lights. You put approximately 1600 ohm resistor in line. The Charger is a grounded light, so I hooked it up to the white with brown stripe over here. Alright, so you can see the relay, the red wire has been removed, we're not using it. So the correct wiring is hot all the time to yellow and white. Blue is your hot output to the trunk wire, and then the black wire on your relay goes to the negative from the alarm. So to do the trunk pop, you connect it to the purple and yellow wire on the one that's hot all the time. See, there's the ignition switch trunk pop there. So even if you have this one hooked up as your trunk pop, you want to connect the Bulldog to this one. Okay, so I've switched the trunk now to where you have to have the ignition key on to pop the trunk. However, I just heard the trunk open. So that's the way to wire it. Alright, I figured out the trunk pop. Crazy as it is, there's a tan and yellow